Welcome to Please Continue, I'm Listening with Dr. Kathryn Hayward. One of the things I love about Living Whole immersion retreats is the way in which people connect with one another, sharing their many interests and talents. That happens when you live together for 5 days. The COVID-19 pandemic halted those gatherings, and I began learning about the possibilities that an online version of Living Whole might offer. One of the people who I would love to share a week with in a Living Whole immersion retreat is Dr. Neal Barnard. Neal, as the founder and president of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, has influenced healthcare policy in the U.S. and beyond through writing dozens of books, researching many aspects of health, and authoring hundreds of scientific articles. He is a compelling presence in conferences and lectures, on film, in PBS specials, and social media. When I was preparing for my podcast interview with him, which we did over Zoom during the pandemic, so please excuse the few special tech glitches, I learned something that I did not know about Neal, that he's a prolific and accomplished composer and musician. For days, I immersed myself in the music of his band, Carbonworks. Neal writes the songs and plays several instruments, and the focus of his work involves themes of compassion and conflict. As with all of the people I interviewed during the pandemic, Neal's podcast embodies wisdom that is priceless. These podcasts focus on the relationships between the interests of each guest and the greater universe of integrative whole health, which brings together the best in conventional medicine, whole plant-based food, movement of the body, and mind-body-spirit disciplines. I hope that you enjoy all the podcasts in this series. You will notice that I start the conversation with Neal in a vulnerable emotional state. That's because I was listening to one of his songs just before I started the Zoom call. I cry every time I listen to certain songs. Neal has kindly gifted us some of his songs for Living Whole Online and has shared with us the backstory of his songs in our series, Behind the Music with Neal Barnard, MD. The following conversation with Neal ranges from science to medicine to music to compassion to kindness. Learn how this North Dakota duck shooting kid turned into the extraordinary man and leader of responsible medicine that he is today. So, Dr. Neal Barnard, please continue. We are listening. Wonderful to see you.
Nice to see you too. Thank you for inviting me to participate.
Thank you for participating.
It's fun to do it.
I've just spent a few hours listening to your music again.
That's nice.
After our exchange a month or so ago, when I discovered that you were a musician and a composer, I sort of immersed in your music, and this morning I reconnected with it, and I'm just in a very emotional state right now, very moved by what you created.
Oh, thank you. Anyway, thank you for saying that. It's kind of its own world, and sometimes a world without words it can't be expressed very well in words, and sometimes can be expressed better in melodies and in connectedness.
Yeah, your body of work at times only works with music, and then other times you have words that speak so deeply to me as I imagine what your life is like in the mission that you have with helping people learn about health and working with the struggles that they have with health. And the song that you have, oh, it touches me so deeply, Neal, the song Louder Than Words. There's a time in the early hours when we're all just shades of gray, walking alone with your demons in tow and memories that won't go away. And if I reached out my hand and I found words that I could say, and you, trembling and all, could you understand, or would you turn away? You know, when I think about the body of work that you have, you know, I first started getting to know you back when you wrote the diabetes book. And I think about what it is to be in this work of trying to help people with their struggles and see the connection between food and how they feel, the things they struggle with. That piece of that song speaks so deeply to me.
You know, I think people want help, they want to connect, but they're also afraid. In sort of every context, when you see a person who is homeless and afraid, and you're trying to help them, and they may have complications of drug use or mental illness or whatever, you want to help, but there's a big concern of, can I reach you? Will you accept it? It's true when you're approaching an animal who's injured and you find the animal may desperately need your help, but they're terrified of you too. And in a sort of funny way, we do a lot of research studies where all we're talking about is food, what you're eating. Even so, we are so deeply connected to the habits that we have been embracing for a long period of time, that for someone to suggest, I think I've got something that might really help, people are naturally and understandably and rightfully skeptical about even something as banal as that. So it's a big part of the human experience to want connectedness, but to be very much afraid of it.
Yeah. And so for you, in your personal journey of wanting to add something to help people who struggle, how do you keep going when so many people are not listening?
I guess I would say two things. I think we do need to always be thoughtful and strategic. You're almost making a war plan, and you have to readjust your strategy based on where things are. So you do have to be strategic and not just hit your head against a wall. You have to think, I think this is what's going to work, and you have to pursue that. But there's another piece of this as well. I heard it said that after World War I, when the war to end all wars, so was thought at the time, had brought the world into such chaos and such an awareness of what people could do to each other, that the League of Nations was to be established so that this would never happen again. And I heard it said that the person among the people who was organizing it, someone had asked him, are you optimistic? Is this going to work? And he said, I'm not optimistic and I'm not pessimistic. I'm just determined. And I've always found that useful, because it's we can't lapse into pessimism. But on the other hand, I don't want to be unrealistically optimistic. I just think that we have to be on a course, and we go forward and we do what we think is going to be the right thing. Now, luckily, there are enough confirmations along the way that what we're doing is right. In the sense of individuals who do change their lives, they change their breakfast. They make a lot of changes personally, and they get this enormous payoff, not just for them, but for their families, sometimes for their communities. So these things do give one some confidence.
And so recently you've been working with hormones, and you've been working with the origin of diabetes. Tell me a bit about that.
The diabetes part, I have to say, was kind of an accident at the beginning. You may not know this. My father grew up in the cattle business, and I grew up in North Dakota. And he did not like raising cattle, and he left. He left the cattle business, and he ended up going to medical school. And he became the diabetes expert for Fargo, North Dakota, and for the whole eastern part of the state. And for all of my growing up, I never wanted to be a doctor. And I thought if I ever were a doctor, diabetes is the last thing that I ever want to get involved with, because nobody ever gets better. It's just, my father would come home every day from the clinic about 6:15. He'd set down his black bag. I never once heard him say that anyone ever got better. Mm-hmm. It was just this effort to slow their decline. So after I became a doctor and I found myself in medical practice, a foundation asked me if I would help them plan some research studies and about diabetes. And I strongly encouraged them. What had happened, it was that they were using rats and mice in experiments and being asked for money for that. And they thought they weren't getting anywhere, and they didn't want to do that anymore. And they asked my advice, and I said, first of all, I would focus on human beings. And secondly, I would focus on what people are eating, because that's got to be the driver. And so they said, all right, will you please do these things? And so we started doing clinical trials. And I soon discovered that, completely unlike this dismal scenario that I had grown up with, where this disease could never get better, exactly the opposite happens. Instead of you writing the prescriptions for the patients, they're writing it for themselves, kind of on their shopping list. And they are making choices in their own lives, and they are changing what's going on in their bodies. And we have been through really high-tech scanning devices like magnetic resonance spectroscopy with our teams. We can look in their bodies and see the changes that occur day by day by day, and you can see their diabetes going away and them actually getting healthy in this amazing way. So it was completely an accident to get into this, but it has been so empowering. And you discover that everything else gets better too. Their diabetes gets better, their weight gets better, their cholesterol goes down. Their kids are getting healthier too, because their kids are eating the foods they're eating. So it's been a great thing to see. And I have to say, parenthetically, the key to it has been to get away from all the things that we ate when we were kids in Fargo, North Dakota. Beef is not on the menu anymore. We're eating our vegetables now. The diet that we've used is totally vegan, low fat, healthy, quite the opposite of what my dad and his progeny ate.
The program that we're creating here, Living Whole Online, as I wrote to you, is about bringing together that approach to eating and movement and what we call mind, body, spirit disciplines, energy practices, music, art, filmmaking, writing, poetry. How do you see your life's work fitting into that sort of whole health approach to things?
I'm not really a philosopher at all, and not a particularly deep thinker, I have to say. But my worldview has kind of infused itself into the strategies of what I try to do from day to day. My worldview is this: there's a lot of suffering in the world, and in this little time that we have, let's see if we can alleviate that suffering. And whether the victims are humans or if they're animals, let's lighten their load if we can. If you've got a little time left after you're doing that, let's try to make this place a little more beautiful with music and dance and art and whatever we can, so that you're actually enjoying your life while you're here. And what I've kind of discovered in my work is, well, I got to tell you, we did one of our diabetes studies. There were a lot of people in the trial, and they went on their healthy diet. They did dramatically better, just dramatically better. But there were a few people who would say, yeah, doc, but I really love cheese, or, some food that they knew had made them sick, but they craved it. So I stuck a needle in everybody's arm. We did blood tests, and we were looking for a particular gene, which we happened to find. It's a gene that for dopamine receptors. Dopamine is the pleasure chemical. And we found that half of the people in this research study had a specific gene that meant they didn't have enough dopamine activity from in day-to-day life. So they would have a sandwich, they would have breakfast, they would have a salad, breakfast, whatever it is. And they wouldn't feel fulfilled. Not because there's anything wrong with the food, but because they were just born with this trait of having not adequate dopamine receptors. So what do? They would have to eat more and and drink more and smoke more and take drugs, and compulsive gambling fits in. Anything that gives you a lot of input, they had to have. And so as a result of inadequate input, whether you want to call it fun or love or whatever it is, food became a substitute, and it drove their disease process. What I'm saying in this roundabout way is that part of getting healthy is to have just a simple strategy, a simple dietary plan and exercise plan to follow. But there are some people where the need for more than that is really strongly expressed and keeps them from being able to take advantage of that prescription. So we find ways to give that to them. And surprisingly enough, it's been in front of us all along. At an AA meeting, they're in a group. It's the group support. The group is there not just because it's cheaper to get together as a group. They're there because they support each other. The same is true with the drug meeting about drugs, compulsive overeating, and every research study that we ever did. You get people as a group together, and I can scan your brain, and I can show you that when I get a group of people together and they're talking and supporting each other, dopamine is released in everybody's brain. So instead of you getting it from pepperoni pizza, you're getting it from being with other people and getting that together. So when people are on a path toward health, the part that provides love and satisfaction and fun is kind of a driver and support for keeping on track.
Mm-hmm. So that was very affected during the lockdown period of the pandemic.
Yeah.
What sorts of things did you notice with patients or with other people that you're in contact with?
Oh, the pandemic just completely threw everything off track, or it changed how we did things. We used to always, in the room that I'm speaking to you from right now, we used to have group meetings here all the time, and our clinic patients would all come in because we have a rule that if you're in our clinic, you can come here for free forever to have group meetings, and we always did them. In the pandemic shut all that down, but it hatched Zoom, and so we discovered that these Zoom rooms that we're in, it's not quite the same. You kind of want to get out of this box, but we also discovered that we can reach more people. We're doing a program in India now, because India has been getting just hammered by the pandemic. Well, if I were in India doing a lecture at a medical school and 300 people showed up, I'd be happy. On Zoom, I can reach 1,000 people in an hour. So the technology is helping us in some ways, as unconnected as we feel, to connect in maybe not the perfect way, but we'll take it. It does work.
Do you think it affects these dopamine experiences that you're noticing when people are physically together?
It's not the same as holding somebody's hand or being right with them or laughing together, but yes, there is a connectedness. We're doing a number of studies right now on menopause, and we have a large group of women who get together, and they talk about how hot flashes are driving them crazy because they're having them 5 times a night when they're trying to sleep and everything. And there is a lot to be said for being able to speak whatever you're feeling, and to hear what others are feeling. And when these studies that we're doing now last 12 weeks, and we're now at week 11 in one of the studies, and the women really don't want to stop, because even though it's Zoom, it's 60 minutes. It is so meaningful to be with other people who share your challenge and who can help you share solutions.
What are you learning about menopause and food?
This is really an amazing thing. Funny story. Everything that we do is sort of an accident, it seems like. I wrote this book called Your Body in Balance, and it was all about hormones and how hormones can be affected by food. And I thought, this is big stuff, and it is, because hormones affect everything in your body, and if you can manipulate them with food, that's good. But anyway, the book came out exactly as the pandemic hit. So I couldn't tour around and I couldn't give lectures anymore. So I thought, well, I want to do some studies. And coincidentally, a woman called me up. She said, I read your book and I read the menopause chapter and I was having hot flashes all the time. But I did what you said and my hot flashes were gone in 5 days. I said, 5 days? My book didn't promise 5 days. I said, this would help, but I didn't think it would be that fast. I said, tell me what you actually did. She said, well, you said be vegan, no animal products. I did that. Great, fine. You said keep the oils really minimal, and there are reasons for that. And so she said, I did that. But she said, you also said use soy products. But I didn't want to use just any like soy milk or something. I went to this, she said she went online and she got whole mature soybeans, non-GMO soybeans, and cooked them up in an Instant Pot. And she batched them into half-cup batches and had one every day. And she said, 5 days I was cured. So I thought, okay, I wasn't that specific in my book. I'm going to test exactly what you did. And to her surprise, I literally did bring in 38 women. Half of them got nothing. Half did exactly what this woman did. And the findings were just dramatic. That if you look at prior studies, a plant-based diet helps some, and soybeans help some. But this combination that we hit on doing it in exactly the way I described was very powerful. We had an 84% reduction in all moderate to severe hot flashes within the 12-week period. Women could suddenly sleep through the night and feel better. And of course, everything else gets better too. You know, you lose weight and digestion gets better and your GERD is gone and your joints feel better and so forth.
And other hormone imbalances that women experience, PMS and those sorts of things?
Oh, yes. Well, that's actually what threw me into this in the very first place. I was sitting at my desk one day and a young woman called me up. Her name was Robin, and her mother was another doctor whom I knew in another part of the country. And Robin said to me that she couldn't move. She had such bad menstrual pain. About one day every month, she just could basically not do much of anything. And maybe 1 in 10 women has them that bad. And so the routine, of course, in medicine is you use a ton of ibuprofen and you might put a woman on the pill. She said, I tried all this. This is not like doing it for me. I need something more. I need Demerol, which is a narcotic. And I said, I can give you Demerol for a day or 2 days, but this is not going to be our solution. And I did something that I don't think any doctor ever would have suggested. I did this for a reason. I said, how about for the next 2 months? No animal product, keep oils very, very low. Now, there was a reason I suggested this. Researchers at Tufts University had just found in women at risk for breast cancer that if they went on a very high fiber diet, beans and vegetables and that kind of thing, and very low fat, that their estrogen levels would settle down. And they thought, okay, that's great. That means there could be less risk for breast cancer. But I let that percolate in my mind. I thought, what is menstrual cramps? Menstrual cramps is estrogen thickening the lining of the uterus too much, causing cramping at the end of the month. So I just thought, I don't know if this is going to work, but let's try it. She did it. The next month she called me back. She said, Dr. Brown, I want to tell you, my period arrived today with no symptoms whatsoever. And that continued until she would cheat on the diet a little bit and then symptoms would come back. So I thought, all right, we need to do a trial. And I connected with our friends at Georgetown University's OBGYN department. We did a randomized clinical trial there that we published in the Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, showing that this diet change that settles out estrogen dramatically reduces pain, also reduces PMS, like bloating and water retention, moodiness, all those things get better. And then we started to apply it to other things. And the applications are for fertility, men and women. Also endometriosis and a huge range of conditions. And those are the things that really got us onto understanding that your hormones can be dialed up, they can be dialed down, you can feel better, you can feel worse. And what really does that, it's fiber, it's fat, and it's certain other things that people eat.
As you know, I live in Spain now for the past 10 years, and the idea of giving up olive oil is like blasphemy.
Right.
We can talk to people about many aspects of a whole food plant-based way of eating, but giving up olive oil, which is what you bring when you go to somebody's house for dinner, you know, you have your own olive trees, you've pressed them, you've turned them into oil, and then you bring it over. Instead of flowers or chocolates, you bring your olive oil. Do you have any sense of how we go about helping countries where that is such an important part of the tradition?
Yeah. Well, every country has their favorite products. And let's say a word for olive oil. I mean, olive oil, it beats the heck out of butter any day.
Right.
And if you talk to a chef from Northern Europe, where it's all cream and milk products, dairy, and then you talk to a chef from Marseille or, you know, somewhere down south, they're going to be aghast that you suggested putting dairy into their food because it's got to be olive oil. That's the better thing. And to its credit, if you look at the saturated fat content of different fats, that's the bad fat. For beef fat, it's about 50% saturated fat. For a chicken fat, it's about 30%. And for olive oil, it's down to maybe 14. So it is better. I mean, there's no question about it. There's no cholesterol in it. There's no estrogen in it, unlike dairy, where there are estrogens that came out of the cow. So it is better. The reason that we encourage people to maybe get away from it is that while it is better, that for many people, the calorie content is high enough that it just sustains the weight problems that they have. And for some people, the saturated fat content is enough that it will affect their cholesterol levels too. Mm-hmm. By the way, I hope this noise isn't driving you crazy. They are renovating this entire building. And just when I think I've got something really important to say, they start drilling upstairs. So you'll have to let me know if it's interfering.
No, it's fine, at least so far. It's perfect.
Okay.
There's been noise at this end, too.
I will say one other thing about olive oil. You know, olive trees don't have a faucet. So if you eat an olive, there's some oil in there, but there's some fiber and there's some pulp. There's a lot of stuff that the olive brags about. To get olive oil, you throw all that away. You know, you throw away all the fiber and all the pulp and you just concentrate this oil. And Mother Nature said, you know, hey, wait a minute. I made that olive, you know, to be a masterful fruit all of its in its own. It's kind of like sugar cane. How much sugar cane can a person eat? You know, a little bit. But if I have a factory that extracts the sugar and I throw all the rest away, now you can eat a lot. Olive oil is kind of like that. You can extract that oil and you can eat a lot of it. And there's a beautiful study called the Predimed study that was done in Spain that showed that when people are on what they refer to as a Mediterranean diet, that it does reduce the risk of heart problems. And that's really true. But unfortunately, the olive oil gets in the way of helping people to also slim down. And so when we want to help people to lose weight, we not only get away from the animal products, but we get away from the oils too. Mm-hmm.
Talk to me more, Neal, about how music fits into your mission.
One piece of this, when the pandemic hit, everyone was sort of panicking, and rightly so, because it started basically New Year's Eve in China, and we started seeing people dying, and especially if you had diabetes. The mortality rate for people with out-of-control diabetes was dramatically higher than for people where their diabetes was under better control. If they had hypertension, if they were overweight, they were sitting ducks for this virus that came in, and then it spread to France. And we saw the same kinds of patterns, that people with underlying health conditions were dying. And then in this country, very rapidly, in the spring of 2020 and through the summer, it got worse and worse and worse. And it especially would take victims in communities of color. Anyway, as this was happening, we're working very hard on the medical side of things to help people to obviously do everything that they can to keep themselves safe from the virus, but also to make themselves stronger, to eat in a good way, to make sure that your medical care is perfect so that your diabetes and blood pressure are really well controlled. But in the course of this, I released a piece of music. And I did it in French and also in English. And it was, to tell you the truth, it was for all those kind of 5-year-old kids who didn't know what the heck was going on and why we can't go to school anymore and why I can't see my friends anymore and how to make sense of this. But you know what? When you reassure a child, you're also kind of reassuring yourself. The point of the song, in French, it's called Tout ira bien. It just means basically everything's all right, or everything is going to be all right. Tonight, it's going to be all right for now. It's not over-promising. As this was happening, to tell you the honest truth, I was remembering my little brother. When I was a kid growing up, my littlest brother, my mom was tucking him into bed. And she said a thing that parents would just say. She said, "Okay, David, time to go to sleep. Nighty-night, sleep tight. Don't let the bed bugs bite." She turned off the lights. And in my brother's mind, bed bugs? He'd never heard this before. And he couldn't sleep all night. He was totally freaked out. And I started to think all of these things that scare children. And then we have these terrible nursery rhymes, like she cut off their tails with a carving knife. And Jack and Jill went up the hill and, he came down and had a neurological injury. So many of the things we present to kids are really kind of mean. And it's not true just in English, but if you look at other cultures, they often have surprisingly gruesome nursery rhymes. So I wrote this song, and the whole idea was to have every image be comforting and nice. And I did it. The singer on it her name is Christine. It's spelled like Heron, Herin, but it's Herin. It's a French name. But she grew up in Italy, right next to the French border, in the mountains. And she is just the most beautiful singer I have ever heard. And I asked her to do it in both languages. And she and I have worked together since 2016. And she did. And it's the most wonderful, wonderful, wonderful song, especially in French. And it's just basically saying, tonight, things are going to be okay. And it choked up even thinking about it, to tell you the honest truth. When we put it together, we decided to put together some images that would make a kid feel okay. And the images were animals yawning and going to sleep. And it's just the cutest little things. So anyway, I hope people have a chance to see it. So what is the point of music? The point of music is not to tell you lies necessarily, although there are a lot of songs that do that. But what I'm trying to do is to sort of tell truths that are reassuring. This pandemic, I don't know where it's going to go. I just know we are together right now. For now, things are going to be okay.
You have some extraordinary musicians that you collaborate with. Just gorgeous people and talent.
Yeah. We mostly found each other by accident. I was jogging in Sacramento, and I was listening to a Belgian radio station, and that's where Christine came on. She was under the stage name Naïf, which means naive. I called her up. She was living in Rome, and I called her up and said, you must come to America. And she did, and we worked together. And Chris Thomas King is an amazing guy. He's from New Orleans, and he is really kind of in the B.B. King school of blues guitar. There's a whole range there's Freddie King and Albert King and others, but Chris Thomas King is just killer. I mean, I heard him at Blues Alley in Washington. I was sitting there, and here was this man I'd never seen before, and he took over the stage, and it was not exactly like modern music. It was more from this kind of old blues school, but just the most incredible thing. When he was done, I kind of grabbed his pants and I said, we got to play together. And 3 days later, we went in the studio, and we recorded some music, which you'll see in some of the videos, the Carbonworks videos. He's just great. And anyway, yes, there are just wonderful musicians. My friend Martha Roebuck in Norfolk, Virginia, and Allegra is the world's greatest violinist ever. And anyway, they're just wonderful, nice people and great to work with. So.
And your cellist, where did you find him?
Yeah, Jeff is, he's a cellist, and he's with the Virginia Symphony. And he came in and just plays so beautifully. In fact, if you happen to hear this song, Tout ira bien, the lullaby I was describing, we were recording it. And Jeff said, wait a minute, wait. This is a great song. This is really, really good. But I want to just play this little bit at the end. And he kind of plucks these notes at the end that are just like this wonderful, quiet little harp that lets the song quiet down. And it's the most wonderful thing when you're doing music. And the best thing that you thought you could do is dramatically better because somebody else came in and said, I've got something to bring to this. I feel like I'm kind of a stone soup composer. Here's my stuff, but some other people bring the radishes and the cabbages and the potatoes, and then it really becomes good.
Close your eyes. Ever so slowly, let the day drift to sleep. And in the nighttime sky, stars like tiny butterflies, and everything will be alright. The night has colors you can paint on the sky. Tuck your head under your wing. Let's see what dreams will bring. You see that everything's alright. Tuck your head under your wing. Let's see what dreams will bring. You see that everything's
How do songs come to you? Do they start with poetry? Do they start with the melody? Is it a mix?
There's peculiar. Usually what I often do is I just close my eyes and I imagine that I'm in an auditorium and I want to hear something really right and really good. I mean, it can be hard driving, it can be aggressive, or it can be quiet and sweet or whatever, but I just want it to be the best thing ever. And so I let the curtains open and I let the musicians come out, just kind of imagining it. And then you hear what it is. And then you try to not lose it while you're writing it down and transcribing it into music. But I have to tell you that sometimes songs will morph in the weirdest places. I was in a ticket line at Dulles Airport, and started to work on a song that's just one of my favorites from many years ago. It's called Song to a Sparrow. My friend, it's not on a video, it's just, we did it on a CD years ago, and my friend Martha Roebuck sang it. I'll send it to you. It's really great, but I mean, Dulles Airport, why would that happen? Hard to know. But you have to throw things out. This is true in every art. It's the saddest thing, because you have to throw out things that are pretty good, but just not right. Or not quite good enough. And everybody loves, like, you love everything you ever made, but a lot of it is just not quite there. So you try to keep what sticks.
How did the song with the Starlings doing the murmurations, the West Pier song, how did that come to you?
That came from West Pier. If you're in London and you get on the train and you go down to Brighton, there are two piers. There's the Palace Pier and there's the West Pier. And this is kind of like the late 1800s holidaymakers would go to these piers, and I don't know what they would eat, whatever the equivalent of cotton candy was back then. Apparently there was some kind of competition between these piers. And a commercial competition, I guess. But starlings would gather on the West Pier. And if you would go out to the beach about sunset, the starlings would come in bit by bit, some from the west and some from the east and some from the north. And you would see them and they would start swirling around in this incredible way. I mean, they make our acrobats look just like amateurs. I mean, the things they do are astounding. And then all of a sudden they settle down. And we would watch this. I would go there a lot and I would look at them. It was just incredible. One day, someone burned down that pier. And the speculation was it was the competing people. I don't know. It was reduced to the skeleton of metal bars. And I was there on a February morning and it was cold. And the birds came in from all different directions. They did their beautiful acrobatics and they settled down on this empty skeleton that offered no shelter at all. And I thought, you poor people, whatever you are, you poor little birds, you poor little angels, really. In the morning, they unwound and went away. And bit by bit, they've been declining, and they may even be totally gone because it was just impossible. But you just think of their vulnerability. And that's what that song is about.
After bells chime, after the night wraps around us in
the film that goes with your song captures those murmurations in a way that you rarely see caught in film. I mean, you can find them if you search on the web, but they're extraordinary formations that happen with starlings. I was so delighted to find that you chose to write a song and create a film about that. Did you actually film that?
No, that was all done. The filming of the birds was professionally done, and you really have to envy their neurology. How is it that they can fly at these incredible speeds, turn instantly, and they don't all smash into each other? And why do they do this? And where does it come from? I have no idea. And they're not alone. I mean, people can badmouth pigeons all they want to, but you see pigeons doing these incredible things too, where their artistic side will come out. Human beings, we do our best, but we're kind of clumsy compared to them.
Oh yeah. No, where I live in Spain, I live high up, and there are pigeons and seagulls, and also swallows. And being able to watch their dances is a tremendous joy.
Yes, and the swallows, they fly around, and then they'll go into a wall where they've got maybe a nest in a little crevice or something like that. And at 150 miles an hour, they settle in. They must give a little mosquito to their baby to eat or something, and they take off again. Their reaction time is astounding. And of course, there's a lesson in there for us, is that we used to have this idea that evolution brought us sort of kind of half-baked species that finally resulted in humanity as the pinnacle of all creation. Then you realize, wait a minute, all the species that are here now are not rough drafts. They are all perfectly suited to their own set of circumstances. So one might need speed, one might need coloration, one might need incredible sensation at night. And there are certain things that we need and certain things we don't have. We can't be a flying squirrel that can go 300 feet through a completely dark sky, and because they need to survive. But we have other things that make us worth preserving too. And anyway, it's sort of given me new respect. And that's true then not only between species, but between individuals, between humans, and between societies. And I'm sorry to say that here in America, like maybe every other country, we're always preoccupied with who's best and what's the best country and whatever. And I find myself when somebody says, America's the greatest country on earth, well, there's a lot to be said for it, but does that mean Canada's not any good? People, wherever they are, they do their best to take care of their families and communities, hopefully, and they all have their own ways of doing things that merit respect.
Well, it's one of the many things that I really admire about your work, is, at least I feel, that you put forth a message of collaboration in contrast with competition. That whether you're working with your music and creating videos about animals who are free and animals who are crying because they are constrained, or all of the different animals that were yawning, all the different species of animals, all of whom yawn in one little video. There's a feeling in your work that I got a long time ago from your science work of, let's just figure this out. Let's just be curious about this and see if we can work together to understand how to do things in a way that alleviates suffering, in a way that answers questions that people have that dog them every day. And so when your music came into my awareness, I thought, oh, okay, this makes sense. How Neal thinks about things and how his view of the world works makes sense to me.
everybody brings so much to it, and they bring things to it that I can't do. And I don't just mean that here at the Physicians Committee, I've got lawyers and fundraisers, and I do, because I can't do that work. But even in medicine, our head of clinical research is a wonderful endocrinologist who can just do clinical research studies in ways that other people really can't, and just does a great job. But the same is true with music. Allegra, our violinist, Allegra Havens, she's just brilliant in the way she plays. But I had the most wonderful moment. In fact, it was the song "Louder Than Words" that you were mentioning earlier. I wrote the melody and I wrote the lyrics and everything else. And Martha Roebuck was the singer on it. She's just incredible singer. So we're singing it all, and I'm in the studio, and she does it, and it's great. And then I went out to the other room to get something, and when I came back, they were running the tape again, and she was in the studio, and she was singing the harmony lines to it, which I hadn't written, and she came up with this, and I thought, I hear your heart beating. I thought, wow, that is great, just fantastic. So what's my job? My job is to just be quiet, just let it happen. And it's so great when everybody brings their piece of it. And they'll also point out things that I do that are like not very smart and that they can do better. And anyway, that's the collaboration clearly makes us much stronger, and it makes the product much better.
Mm-hmm.
There's a time in early hours when we're all just shades of gray, walking alone with your demons in tow, and memories that won't go away. I found words I could say, and you, trembling and all, could you understand, or would you turn away? I hear your heart beating, your heart
Well, that is what I'm discovering as we put Living Whole online together. You know, it's got this whole aspect where I have the joy and luxury of having these conversations with people. And if someone were to listen to all the different conversations that are coming forward, I think one of the biggest messages people would hear is the message of collaboration. And I think another message is curiosity, just being curious. You know, you told the story of the woman with the soy. You know, you decided, okay, I need 38 people to try this so that I can figure out if this is an N of one or an N of more. And so as we bring together the podcasts, the musicians, the artists, the writers, the energy practitioners, the movement specialists, the food people, it's this really exciting process of what can any individual who's looking at these things online take from this and move their life in a different direction.
I think that is so wonderful what you're doing. You're bringing things together in a way that nobody ever really has or has thought to do so. I think it's fantastic, and I'm grateful to you for letting me play a small part in it.
Oh, well, I would love to know if we could put some of the videos that are on YouTube right into our platform. We've been doing that with some other people.
Absolutely. Be my guest. You certainly can. I would be absolutely honored if you would do that.
Oh, that would be great, because some of them I cry every time. Every time I watch Louder Than Words, every time I watch the lullaby, so I think it would be really beautiful to have that as part of what we're offering.
Please do that. And my secret is that I do too. I have to say, you know, it's funny if your heart's been broken ever, if you've been hurt, or if you've lost somebody, you might get over it in the same sense. If you cut yourself, that cut will heal, but cuts heal with a scar. And so when you have another loss and another loss and another loss, or some other terrible thing happens to you, it can reopen the sensitivity to all those previous ones. And so this kind of journey that we're on with life is one of having new joys and all kinds of great new things and successes happening, but also problems and things that will reopen old injuries. And so I'm kind of at the point in my life where, you know, you see a dog chained up somewhere suffering in the cold, and you think, oh my God, you know, it reawakens other things that you remember. So that never entirely goes away, but it has a happy ending.
We have a good friend on Mallorca who, when she sees baby lambs in the field and she knows that they're going to become somebody's lunch in a few days, she has the instinct to go and steal them out of the field and bring them to her apartment.
I completely understand. You need a pretty big apartment eventually.
Yeah, you do.
Well, I think that's sort of an important thing to recognize also, is that when, as I said earlier, I don't necessarily feel pessimistic or optimistic. I would like to say that we're on a great trajectory as a human species, but I'm not sure that that's the case. There's one of the songs that it has a video associated with it is kind of a grim song called "God Save the King," and it's musically a very pretty song. It's very beautiful in my view, and Martha sings it with a band. But it's a song of disappointment and a song of feeling that you really believed things would work out. And it could be you had hoped that a marriage would work out, or a project would work out, or your family would stay together, something like that, and ending up feeling betrayed. But the real motivation was for it. I was thinking about Kristallnacht, where in Berlin one night, not just one night, but it was sort of the culmination of this anti-Semitic activity, and people being killed and their business being attacked and so forth. And it was a neighbor attacking a neighbor. And what was this about? And so I ended up using the image of glass breaking apart in the beginning. And then it uses footage that I got from the US Navy of German munitions factories getting ready, and images of the cutest little German boys growing up to become Nazi soldiers. And it took me a long time to pull this together. And I went to Auschwitz and shot footage there, which I ended up never using any of it. But the final thing to me is very powerful, aesthetically beautiful, but not optimistic. And or maybe that's too strong. I guess I would say it's sort of cautionary that you look away and bad stuff comes up. It's like mildew in your shower. You know, 72 hours from now, your shower's gonna have this come up again. The human spirit is such that bigotry and selfishness and greed and violence well up all the time. And so we have to always be the conscience that says, no, we are not going to do that. And we have to find ways to restrain this incredible assertiveness that people seem to be genetically driven by that takes any number of victims. So anyway, forgive me for that long-winded, not so optimistic statement, but that song is about the idea of being conscious that we have to always assert, bring in kindness and compassion because they are lost so easily.
Yes, and find what we have in common. And that's one of the things that comes through in a number of your videos.
Yeah.
Is you know, the one where all the different species are yawning, for example.
When you see the little koala in the tree at the end, and you see him like putting his head down, his arm folds down asleep, he is, for all intents and purposes, like a 5-year-old kid, just like relaxing asleep. And you think we have so many of these goofy things in common. And by the way, and it's not just, you know, animals that are like really similar to us. There's lizards and birds, and they all kind of do these same things.
Yeah.
Together.
Yeah, it's that it's the things that we have in common, and as you say, developing enough consciousness about that we can have compassion for all species, for one another, for ourselves, and for all species on Earth. That we're at a critical point right now.
It's such an enriching thing. When I was a kid, my dad used to bring us out to the swamp areas outside of Fargo, and the ducks and geese would be flying out of Canada in the fall, and we would shoot them and kill them. And they would fall on the ground, and we'd pick them up and have them for dinner. And at some point along the line, I thought, wait a minute, there is no animal more gentle and beautiful than a duck. Trying to a duck couple the whole duck group trying to get out of the frozen north. And they're very benign. And I found myself realizing that you can see kind of the gentleness in other animals. You can decide to shoot them with your camera maybe, or just leave them alone.
How did you evolve from a duck shooting North Dakota kid to who you are today?
Why did I decide to set down my shotgun? It was one thing after another. The year before I went to medical school, I had a job in the basement of a Minneapolis hospital, and I was working in the morgue. I was the autopsy assistant. When somebody would die in the hospital, I had to help the pathologist do the exams. I would weigh things and help him out. And he knew that I was going to be going to medical school, so he would give me these elaborate lectures as he would open up the bodies and identify the cause of death. And one day a guy died in the hospital of a massive heart attack, probably from eating hospital food, I would say. But anyway, that's another story. So he opened up the chest, and he removed this big section of ribs from the front of the chest so he could see the heart. He took the ribs out, he put them on the table. And he said, look in here. And the heart, he opened up a coronary artery, and he said, you're going to see atherosclerosis. And it's frightening. It's like concrete inside the arteries. And we found it in the carotid arteries going to the brain, and in the renal arteries going to the kidneys, and all over. So at the end of the exam, he writes up his findings, systemic atherosclerosis, died of a myocardial infarction. He leaves the room. So I have to clean up. So I took the ribs, I put them back in the chest, and I sewed everything up and cleaned up, put the body back in the cooler. When I was done, I went up to the cafeteria. They were serving ribs for lunch. And I just stopped and I looked at that and I smelled it. And I thought, that looks just like a body and it smells like a body. That is a body. And it's fun. I had driven cattle to slaughter myself. My dad wasn't in the business anymore, but his brother was. And so we drove cattle to East St. Louis. And I remember the looks on their faces, actually. They don't want to be there. But anyway, I didn't become a vegetarian right away, but I knew I just couldn't eat that. And when I would see meat, it smelled to me like a body. And I started to identify, I know this sounds like totally creepy, but I would identify meat with death, which obviously, of course it is. And it's not a very long journey, but from there to thinking about the compassionate side of it and what does it take to turn a majestic cow into lunch. And so I just stopped eating animal products. And as time went on, I was in medical school and I was learning that you're a whole lot better off without them. And it just goes from there.
You were learning in medical school that you're better off without?
You can easily miss that message. But you learn, for example, that cholesterol is not found in plants. It's in meats and it's in dairy products and things. And if you read between the lines, it kind of tells you what you might want to choose for lunch.
How many people do you know that went to medical school that read between those lines?
Well, yeah, I have to say, nutrition is embarrassingly neglected in medicine. We treat diabetes as if it's a metformin deficiency. Okay, you got hypertension? You just need lisinopril. Well, wait. What caused it? The vast majority of conditions we see all relate to diet. And when you pull together the cause of it, when you come to understand it, you can see why. And our work has, to a great degree, been to try to connect those dots a little better. With diabetes, for example, through very expensive scanning technology, you can see how a person gets diabetes because you can see what's happening in their cells so that their cells no longer take sugar out of the blood. You can see it. And you can also see how they get better when you make a diet change so that their cells recover their function. You can see all these things. But really, I shouldn't have had to have a multi-$1,000 scan in order to see that, because we knew that people on mostly plant-based diets living in impoverished parts of rural Asia, where all they could afford was some rice and vegetables, and they weren't having steak and didn't have cheese, they didn't have diabetes. And when the diet westernized, diabetes comes in, and you put a few things together, you can start to piece the pathophysiology together such that it's self-evident.
Yeah, we have a similar thing going on with COVID right now, where there are certain countries in the world that are doing fine with COVID because they have made certain strategic decisions to, and so what in Europe and in the United States, where everyone's scratching their heads trying to figure out, are we going to get another wave with the Delta mutation, or what, should we wear masks? If we would just look at the examples in the world, we would know the answers to so many things.
Yes, and one of the real tragedies is it's a pandemic that didn't have to happen. Back before this began, by about 102 years, the influenza pandemic of 1918 really took over in a huge way. And it was because of the intersection of people and animal abuse, to tell you the truth. You have viruses that look perfectly fine in birds. And then once people decide, I have to have a whole lot of wild ducks in my yard. And when viruses can jump from one species to another, viruses are very opportunistic. They want their progeny to do well. So they're looking for a new host. And when you get into a new host, you've got a whole new immune system that you've got to disable. So mutations are the name of the game. The virus has to mutate to survive. And suddenly a mutated virus can become much more pathogenic and much more dangerous. And you can suddenly have millions of people dying of influenza. And then we get some ability to deal with it, but people are then still keeping animals nearby. And you have a reassortment process with new viruses that come in from ducks and geese or whatever. And you get a whole new virus to which we have no immunity. And you kill a whole bunch more people in 1957 and in 1968. And the coronavirus, whether you believe it came from a lab or came from a wet market in Wuhan, either way, the original source was a bat. And it's in certain mammalian species, such as bats, that normally would never come into contact with humans. And when the viruses can make that leap, and they're not content to be one variant. We have opened Pandora's box. The doors will not close. We will be very lucky if we don't just see one more variant, one more variant, one more variant, one more variant. And this is just like influenza. It's now an annual thing. It's forever. Coronaviruses are very likely to be that too. We'll have to keep our masks handy. We have to see what's going on. But had we left animals alone, we would have been much less likely for this to have occurred.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to share with me?
I've probably been blabbing far too much. Forgive me for anything I said that was really dull. But this I'm grateful to you for letting me talk about this intersection between music and science and medicine. It's a fun thing to talk about. Hopefully it has some meaning too.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm so grateful that you're part of Living Whole Online. And I can imagine that when we edit this, we'll weave in some of the videos now that you've given us permission to do that.
Please do. I'd be very honored, and we'll have much more to come. We've been working on a lot more music, and I hope you like it.
Oh, well, thank you, Neal, so much. It's such a joy to be with you.
Well, likewise. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful to talk to you. And if you're back on this side of the pond at any point, come back and see us.
I will do that. And if you want to come over to Mallorca, I would love to host you.
What a wonderful idea that would be. Thank you.
Thank you, Neal.
So long.
Bye-bye.